first thing we're going to get into is a very pivotal vote in the United Nations this week. The United States has vetoed a resolution for a ceasefire call in the Gaza Strip. The United States vetoed this resolution as the only member of the Security Council to do so. The United Kingdom abstained because they have a policy of abstaining for all stuff related to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. There were 13 council votes in favor, and the United States was the sole veto. What was your initial reaction to this, Ben?
Pain. True pain. I don't know. We've talked a lot about how it's hard to look at this conflict from a perspective of pure good and bad because there's been both. Not both. It's just mostly bad on both sides, it seems, except for the innocent civilians, that is. And now, for a long time, for 2 months that this conflict has been going on, it's just been the Israelis attacking the innocent civilians.
Yeah.
So for the U.S. to go out of its way to be the one out of 13 council members to veto the call for a ceasefire is pain. It's like shame that it's us.
Right. It's shameful.
Yeah.
It makes us unserious leaders, I feel like. Like so much of the world, whether you like it or not, looks to the United States for some type of moral guidance. And with this Gaza situation and the abuse that they're facing on behalf of the Israelis, we have no moral authority. The Palestinian Authority leader, President Abbas, this is the guy Biden actually wants to lead an eventual Palestinian state in Gaza. Like he wants this guy to be a leader there. Abbas said that this makes the United States responsible in war crimes. And this is supposed to be the United States' partner in a future peace.
Yeah.
And he's out here accusing us of war crimes, and he's not totally wrong.
No, absolutely not. I mean, he said they're complicit in war crimes, which that is, I think, exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Russia and China are calling out the United States for this move. Both of them have been very, very pro-Palestinian in its past and present. A lot of it is opposed to American interests. It's not so much that they care so deeply about the Palestinian people and anti-imperialism. We can see that with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, right? They have no problem with imperialism there, but they have problem with imperialism in Israel. The correct position is to have problem with imperialism in both cases.
Sure.
And both the Russia and Chinese and the United States are all hypocrites in this.
Yes.
They're all okay with the imperialism of their color.
Well, I think this is a good example of why it's just a bad call for the U.S. to do it. Because, like you said, it removes their credibility on the world stage.
Totally.
That's what allows Russia and China to do this. It's a bad idea. And I got a little bit stuck on the thing you said about the U.S. having moral authority, because I think that is true. But to a greater extent, it's a tactical authority. It's like countries look to us and they see what they're allowed to do.
True.
And what really worries me is us giving this sign that this kind of behavior could be okay for one of our close allies.
Right.
That we could let them get away with something this bad.
No, totally. And our world right now is entering into this jungle that we haven't seen in a long time. We're about to enter a period of human history where we're not going to have a single hegemon. Pax Americana is over, right? The American empire no longer is the reigning superpower, ominous over all countries. We're seeing conflicts rise at the largest rate in a long time. I think it's 180 something border conflicts going on across the world right now.
Really?
Yeah, it's something like that.
Holy
and
cow.
this is some of the highest in like 20, 30 years.
Yeah. I mean,
and it's because of the United States receding off the world stage.
Yeah, we're still the biggest dog in the yard, right? We're still
Right.
the biggest player on the stage, but we're less involved in everything else that's going on around us.
Yeah. The American people don't want to be totally involved. And to be quite frank, we honestly don't have the resources to be totally involved everywhere that we once did.
Yeah.
I mean, at a certain point, America controlled, I think, 50% of the global GDP in the 1950s. Like, it's very easy to be the global superpower when you're 50% of the world's domestic product.
Yeah.
But that's simply not the case anymore. So Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, Doctors Without Borders, all of these human rights organizations have condemned the veto by the United States, and all of this is going on while Israel is pressing their attack on Gaza, and the United States is again complicit. That's the best word for it. There has been an emergency sale of $106 million worth of tank ammunition, that is 14,000 rounds, from Washington heading to Israel. We are just arming the offensive here,
Yeah.
with no end in sight.
I will say, so after you say no end in sight, earlier today,
Oh.
I saw a New York Times update on this that Biden came out and we kind of saw the first cracks. So I'm
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
yeah, so I'm hopeful that maybe there could be an end in sight. Maybe we could get towards conditioning some of this aid. Biden specifically said that Israel is losing the international support that they once had for the invasion or for the attack on Gaza, or the retribution that they're trying to take.
The right to defend itself. That line is getting more and more eroded with every Palestinian baby they kill.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So the fact that Biden acknowledges that, and I think he also said that Netanyahu has to accept a future second state for the Palestinians.
He said that. I think he also said that Netanyahu has to make changes to the governing coalition, which is the furthest right in Israel's history.
Yes, and that is, we cannot have a lasting peace with the current coalition right now. There is just no path forward for that. Israel has going above and beyond in its invasion. They are rounding up men in the Gaza Strip and interrogating them with extremely, extremely brutal means. There have been some accounts. One man described how he was pulled out of a building in Gaza City. He was then ordered to the street, stripped down to his underwear, and Israeli forces beat him and zip-tied him and left him alone for several days, gave him very little water to drink in a cell. Another man had his hands swollen because of the lack of blood circulation due to the zip ties that were around his wrists, and said older men with diabetes or high blood pressure were ignored when they asked soldiers to remove the ties. His 17-year-old son is still being held by the IDF, as the AP reported this.
Yeah, so I've heard of so many horrific, or just read about so many horrific stories. We have here that 9 out of 10 people in northern Gaza report spending at least one full day and night without food. It's getting to the point where aid trucks can't get into Gaza without being raided by civilians because people are so desperate and in need of food. And it's just heartbreaking. Like it makes me so frustrated that we can't do anything. And it's like the peak of human suffering.
Yeah, it's bad. And Israel is just not being a good partner in making this war livable to the civilian population, right? They're telling the people to go south, go towards the Rafah crossing in Israel, and then we get reports that they're bombing the Rafah crossing.
Yeah.
So
it's not only that of course they're bombing the areas that they tell the civilians to go, which is terrible, but they're also, in the first place, telling the civilians of Gaza, the 1.1 million people who live there, to pack into an area that's just like a few square miles large.
Yeah.
Like it's impossible to live in those conditions. It's impossible to be okay like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Since December 1st, 2,500 Palestinians have been killed. That's in 11 days. And this is of an article written 2 days ago. So
yeah,
the deaths are just growing more and more rapidly. Larger other Arab organizations are getting in the fight even more so now. The Houthi rebels, who have been in the fight for a while now but are upping their game, have vowed to destroy any ship that it thinks it's heading to an Israeli port as it comes through the Red Sea. A French ship recently was attacked by Houthi rebels, and they had to shoot down 2 drones that were heading right towards the ship. Hezbollah in Lebanon has claimed responsibility for 9 attacks this past Saturday, and Israel is now threatening to invade Lebanon as of this morning and yesterday. So the war could expand, but I don't see where it ends. I don't know. I don't think it ends until Israel just is able to have total military occupation of Gaza, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that'll probably be the case too, and it's an outcome that supposedly no one wants. I don't think Israel wants that. I don't think they want to spend their resources occupying Gaza. Yeah. I know the U.S. doesn't want it. At least that's what the Biden administration has said constantly. I think that's kind of a huge part of the problem. Nobody knows what this is supposed to look like afterwards. Netanyahu came out and said specifically, Gaza cannot be Hamas-stan or Fatah-stan. And Fatah is the party that leads the Palestinian Authority, which governs to some extent the West Bank.
Right.
It's who Biden has looked to and suggested as the future leaders of Gaza. So without them as leaders, like Netanyahu's not suggesting anyone else.
That's not a serious suggestion, right?
No.
Fatah has done bad things in the past. They were big on hijacking planes back in the 80s and 90s. And I think into the 2000s, but they have had massive reforms and have renounced violence since the Oslo treaties or something like that. Like they've renounced violence for at least 2 decades now, and they haven't been proponents of violence. So it's just Netanyahu, I don't think, is a genuine partner for peace, especially as long as he has right-wing militants, basically, in his governing coalition, which do want a total annexation of the Gaza Strip. I would love to see that.
Yeah, I think so. It's also hard because you're right about Netanyahu, but to also talk about the other side, there's no partner for peace on the Gaza side.
No, there isn't.
Right? There's no leader that they're really. I mean, we just talked about the person that Biden was thinking about as the new leader of Gaza, Abbas, he's distancing himself.
Yeah, and listen, Hamas doesn't want peace. Hamas wants to eliminate Israel.
Correct.
Right? Hamas is ready to fight this until the end.
Absolutely. They're ready to fight it to the end. They don't care about how many civilians are killed. They had this ceasefire that happened for, a week for a while, but then but I think they were doing that just to regroup themselves, and they're not worried about civilian casualties.
No, they're not.
Okay.